Hi, everyone. Welcome. I love this part when I get to click on the little participants carrot and see you all coming in this strange virtual room we're sharing. So thank you. Thank those of you who've been able to join us for our other two talkbacks. Two? Oh my gosh. First of all, I want to start by saying I just saw the designer run of an Iliad and I'm still a little on another plane. So if I seem spacey, it's because I've just wept all my makeup off and tried to put it all back on again. So that'll be why. But we're here today to talk about Jimmy DeVita's beautiful play in Improbable Fiction, which is playing up the hill right now. This is a second talkback, thank you, for our second talkback. Because we only have two plays running at this point. I'd like to start by saving me from being alone on this box by inviting the wonderful actors who've joined us this afternoon to talk about this play to click your cameras on and say hello to the folks. We have Brian Mani, Román-Meléndez, Melisa Pereyra, Sarah Day, and I think that we may have Tracy join us at some point. I'm not certain yet what her schedule has done, but I'm grateful to have the four of you with us today. I have had a chance to walk around property today, and I wish we were all together in John's place, the embrace of John's place, sharing conversation. This is the only opportunity. I mean, it's because I'm so connected to that memory of us all being there in that space. And Ron, you haven't been there yet, but believe me, it is just wander by and imagine. This says the host has stopped me from starting the video. I'm not sure, maybe that is Tracy trying to get in. So I'll let Sarah work her magic backstage. And in the meanwhile, yes, we are, yeah. Hi, let's talk about this play. Oh, here's what I wanted to say. There's a Q&A box. So this is a talkback. In traditional times, you might be seeing this group of actors after you've seen the play. It wouldn't probably be in John's place. We'd be on the stage, they'd be exhausted, we'd be exhilarated, and we'd pepper them with questions. But this time we're doing it in this virtual medium. There's some of this group who won't have seen the play yet. There's some of this group that has seen the play. So we'll try to be judicious about what we share and what we don't share. But please, audience, throw in questions. Hi, Tracy Michelle Arnold. It says you're Carey Cannon, but you're not. So grateful to have you here. I'm going to be trying to moderate the Q&As in the Q&A. Oh gosh, this is an anonymous attendee has a very good start. What is the difference? Those of you, Ron, I know you were not in our virtual production, but it's a question about what it is to do the show continually and not in rep. For these artists, these core company artists who've made their careers here, we're used to building a show. It can be a big show, but then eventually, you're only going to do it twice a week. And you were building this show, and Brian, who's on stage much of the time, Sarah as well, Ron as well. That's a lot. It's a different story when you're doing it 7-8 shows a week. Anybody want to speak to that?
So when we're doing the regular rep and we do it once, twice, maybe 3 times a week, there is something gained, I think, in that time off. You ruminate about the character, you think about it, you maybe think about, okay, in 2 days we're going to do it again, and I'm going to try something. But there's also this memory sort of catch up every time. There are times when we get to August when we don't do the show, but maybe 3 times or 4 times in the whole month because the second round of shows are opening. And those are exciting times. But doing it 8 times a week, it's a different animal. I mean, I do it at other theaters, but I'm loving it because the show gets to morph every day. It gets to keep taking shape, and it's kind of fun to see where it goes.
Anybody else? Thoughts about the difference for you all?
I would just add that it's also, although we're used to this 8-show week schedule when we work at other theaters, I think that being outside is such a different situation because and I was talking to Tracy, I think, about this too, but the level of output of energy depends on the weather. It depends on so there are just inside, how much energy it's going to take every time you do it. But outside, it really is the same play, but the amount of energy it takes to get it done depends on what the weather, how it's helping us tell the story, or how it's not.
That's a really good point, Melisa. And for our audience who may not be aware, this show has run the real Wisconsin gamut from at just almost freezing to in the 90 pluses. And that is, Wisconsin. And Sarah, you've been with us and in this and working at other theaters as well, where you do 7-8 shows a week. So how does it feel for you to be on the Hill in one role that many times a week?
It has felt really lovely to be able to be in continual relationship with Nell and with the Boar's Head Tavern patrons. It's really been a nice treat to be able to keep repeating this and feel like you grew a little bit from the last thing you did, and I've enjoyed it. It's been something different that I've enjoyed that. And I think we sort of celebrated the idea that this is the first time that that a single group of actors have had an 8-show week. We usually only do about 7 shows, and people aren't always in that, but that we have done now 2 continuous 8 shows a week, including a 5-show weekend that within the course of 48 hours, we do 5 performances. So we are at it.
You're athletes, you're elite athletes. We also had a question that for many of you, you're playing Shakespeare characters that you have played here at APT for our audience. For Brian's part, it's Falstaff, and Sarah Day's Mistress Quickly, and Tracy Arnold's Cleopatra, and Melisa's Juliet, and Ron it's his first season with us, but I'll bet there may be a messenger or two in your life. And the question is, how does that inform playing that character in a new play, and how is it different? How is it similar? How is it different? What you learned about that character? Or Tracy, sorry.
I can speak to that. So I've been lucky enough to be Cleopatra here twice, once inside and one outside. And one of them was with Jimmy, who wrote the play. So, we played opposite each other. So it was fun to relive a little bit of that with him. But what was the most fun about this particular Cleo is that she's a bit of I don't even think bit of it is right. She's a drama queen. Now, she's always been a drama queen. If you've ever seen Antony and Cleopatra, she's pretty dramatic, but I get to push it a little bit. Tim Osell said near the end of our rehearsal process that he wished that we could have a subtitle to this play, and that it would be the whole thing would be called An Improbable Fiction, a Fantasia on Themes, because from a director's view, he thinks that this play has several themes. It's got thematic elements from all these different styles of theater. And he started by saying, for instance, when Cleopatra enters, it's a farce. And I thought, it is. So I get to chew on the scenery a little bit and have a really good time doing it. So I enjoy that. I enjoy that about this particular Cleo. And that she gets to speak up for herself and say, P.S., I'm always connected with Antony, and I was a very powerful leader in my day. So it's nice that I have that as well.
Looks like you're reaching for there you are, Brian.
So playing Falstaff in this play, there's really a lot of the water that seems the same. But then there are places where Jimmy takes the play where I start drawing in. I'm drawing. Jimmy has written in a bunch of quotes from all sorts of plays, but there's much of the play that I feel like it's all being filtered through Falstaff, and Falstaff is twisting things the way he would. And then there's a time in the play that we depart from that, and I don't feel like Falstaff really at all. And at first that was a little upsetting because there are times when I really do feel like I am that I am a package of the ingredients of a character. And then there are times when I just feel like I'm just a package of ingredients that come out the way the recipe does every night. So
I've not heard that analogy before. That's really interesting.
There's a part of the show that it's a mixed bag, literally. The ingredients go in there and they get shaken up, and I don't necessarily feel like fault. I feel like an actor going through a thing, and I find that freeing and wonderful, and it's another wrinkle maybe to Falstaff.
When you play it again, it'll be interesting to see
if that informs it, maybe.
Yeah, if that informs it.
Yeah.
Sarah or Melisa or Ron?
Yeah, sure. I'll right. I mean, not this being my first shot at being on the boards for APT. I mean, yeah, I've played Messengers at a couple of theaters, and it's what's really cool about doing this character under these set of circumstances in this play. It's just that in like a meta sense, I get to actually have the experience that the messenger has as the play is going on, because once he comes on, right, he never leaves. And so everything that everybody does slightly differently, Ron, get to experience every night, and I get to watch the show evolve, and I get to watch everybody play. And so it's like I am watching Melisa and Tracy and Brian and Sarah play while the messenger is watching Cleopatra and Falstaff, and it's so cool. And then what I love that Jimmy wrote in is that one line that the messenger has of, without those messages, nothing happens. I mean, I've been on the opposite end of that in a show where a messenger misses their entrance, and that is the only character who at that time could possibly have that information. And so to think of those characters that are like, oh, well, nobody remembers them. Yeah, but if they're not there, the show doesn't happen. And so it's like this fun feedback loop of experiencing and moving forward. It's been a beautiful thing to be a part of. And and I always loved, to this day, I still love getting those tracks that are like 8 different characters into one, because it's like those ancillary characters, they add so much richness to the story, and it's great. It's fun.
Thank you. Melisa or Sarah, you've done Juliet a couple of places. I love that, seeing you these years later. I would love to see you play that role again in that play, because of the colors and what we've learned and what you've learned and where we are and where the world is. And Sarah Days Quickly is still one of the most, both in Merry Wives. I mean, that relationship that you and Brian have built up over the years is really glorious for us and our audience to see. As if anybody who's heard the curtain speech, people are just a little excited to see you, Sarah. And anonymous attendee number 2 said, "Did you miss us as much as we missed you?"
Oh,
yeah. MJ is here. And says, Ron, we really appreciate the multiple roles you cover. And Ron has to do a lot, serve a lot of different functions in the play while being an observer. And when I saw you out in Virginia, you were playing you wore 7 hats and played a bunch of different characters and 5 musical instruments. And I was like, who is that guy? Will he come and work with us?
My favorite one out there was one summer. I would leave the stage as Leontes, get into the bear costume, go out and eat Antigonus, leave, get pulled out of the bear costume, grab a guitar and go out to play intermission music, to then go change into a shepherd.
We used to say that any actor who'd work for Montana Shakes, they're not going to be scared by the work here. And then I went out there and I was like, she just played Cleopatra. She has not left the stage, and she pulled up a stand-up bass. And now she's going to play through intermission while we walk in front of her to get our wine. And she's just playing. And I was like, oh my God, it was extraordinary. We do have a question. Are any of the characters' costumes identical to what they wore as the same characters in earlier APT productions?
They're not, mine is not identical, but it's definitely one of my one of the dresses that I wore for the least amount of time when we did R&J. So it's kind of fun. Probably the one that I didn't wreck, but yeah.
Scott Rote is our costume director, and he designed this show. So I think he and Tim Osell, the director of the play, had a lot of conversations about wanting it to be referential. But for Tracy's costume in particular, that there was a sense that we were in Elizabethan England. So there was a nod to those shapes and styles. Whereas if we were doing a straight production of Antony and Cleopatra, or our most recent Merry Wives, for example, which was set in a different time, that there wanted to be a feeling that this was during Shakespeare's time. So I love that in Melisa's case, we were able to do a nod to a look we may have been familiar with. But I think, and Sarah's, you were built for this, I think.
Yeah, my favorite is that the underskirt, was one that was created for Colleen Madden when she was expecting Gidry. And there's something about knowing that gives me so much joy.
I love that story. I had no idea. Are you in the same fat suit, Bri, or is that a different one? I'm sorry, Ron, I'll get right back to you.
Yeah, same fat suit, and actually the same pants from Merry Wives last time, which was nice for them because they knew that it would fit. So and the boots are different, and the doublet is different, but it feels familiar. That fat suit.
It's an old friend.
Was missing me.
Ron, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Well, I was just going to take a moment to right as the kind of newbie here to geek out for a second. And like what Sarah and Brian just said, I think it's so beautiful that y'all get to have that experience of, and which is kind of the same thing that these characters are going through in the play, of those spaces that we're familiar with, right? To say that I know the history of this costume piece that I'm wearing. It's not just, oh, it was built for the show, but it's like, right, literally sweat and effort of people that I know, other artists, like all of those energies get balled up into the costumes, and then we get to put that on. So we're wearing the memories of those that came before us onto the stage, and so then we get to then do that play, and it's really cool how the train has left the station now. I lost where I was going, but it's such a rich experience, even from my side, that I think truly like that just emanates out into, I mean, and we hear it every day when Sarah comes out before the welcome even happens and the place erupts. It's like, yeah, it's great.
I on occasion during the dark days of the pandemic, when I was at work, would just walk through the racks at the costume shop, and it was like seeing you all. It was like visiting friends. And I could remember Melisa in that, and Brian in that, and Sarah in that, and Tracy in that, and I will do it with you, Ron, as well. And I will, but there is, and it's pretty extraordinary that history shows up. And I want to speak to that sort of stewardship and community and company. And I know during the pandemic, Ron came after his contract in Virginia when we had to cancel our season, and so became a part of our community before you even became an actor with us in this sort of miraculous way. And we were trying to do these distanced, let's stay 30 feet away community events. And at one point we said, well, let's do like sunset cocktails up the hill. And Ron came up, and I got to see you get on the stage. And I, as a artistic producer, got to say, oh, so here's some of what's next. Here's an actor meeting our stage for the first time. And those of us who've been here for a while, that there's a special joy in seeing someone get their words and heart and work in the boards up there. Because we believe, I think everybody in this call believes, that lives in the space. Melisa wrote a beautiful poem about one of her warm-ups about what lives in the seats. And that's you as audience members, that your energies and those lost loved ones that we've had who've been audience members or actors here, their energies, we're getting very meta for a minute, but or deep for a minute, but that's true. And this play plays with those stories, plays with what's not just the words, plays what's underneath the words, and talks about relationship. So even any thoughts you want to share about that, both your own stewardship of this space, and Ron, maybe what it feels like. It's pretty daunting, I would imagine, to walk into a room where most of these, at the very least, these colleagues have worked together 7-8 years, and some of them 30 years. And how were you able to navigate that?
Well, I mean, for me, honestly, it was really easy because of how generous everybody has been. I mean, right. I mean, from day one, what was kind of a big level playing field for me in my mind was knowing that all of us were coming off of the craziness of the pandemic. And so in my mind, I was like, even though I'm the only one who it's like my first season here, but for all of us, this is like our first time back to some degree after this craziness, and knowing that even after this season, things will probably maybe change back to a little more of what's like maybe the second contract might feel more new than this experience. And so knowing that we were all sharing that space to me was like a big like, okay, let me just be in the room. But then once I got there, I mean, I'm so thankful and grateful to the heart that everybody brought. Like it from day one, I don't know, feeling welcomed into the fold. I've been in the room before whereas like the newbie, there's that air of those that have been before. They're like, oh, let us teach you how this thing goes, and well, here's how this operates. But from day one, I was very thankful that it was like, let's all create. That's what we're here to do. Is we're here to create, and we're here to explore. And I love how that informed the rehearsal room, and I love how that then informed the play. I mean, just the show itself. What I like is that I feel like we get to see all these characters as people. Like we get to shed that assumption of like, oh, well, Juliet's this way, Cleopatra's this way, Falstaff is this way quickly. And that is there, but then we get to set that aside and be like, all right, but there's a humanity under there, and we get to hang out with them and we get to live with them for a little while. And I think that's part of the beauty, because not only do we get to do that with the characters, but then as the audience gets to do that with each other and then take that energy forth out of the theater. I think it's a beautiful thing that's happening.
That leads into a question, because about the play being informed. I think the play was informed by the actors who inhabited the roles, and the play changed through the rehearsal period. I was looking at those rehearsal reports, and there was daily line changes, ads, switches. What was it like? It's a very new experience for APT to be putting on a new play. How was it like for all of you? What's your experience with new plays? What was this experience like? I'd love for each of you to speak to that if you wouldn't mind. Bri, I know that Jimmy, we did a Zoom of that. So there's the difference between creating a piece for Zoom and then this piece grew out of that into this full, beautiful production.
Yeah, well, first of all, Jimmy is so collaborative. He holds very little of his script as precious to the point that he doesn't, he can let go of almost anything that needs to be let go. He's also very firm about some of the strong, guideposts of what he wants. But he's wonderful to work with as a playwright. Many years ago, 10, 11 years ago, I got to work on Gift of the Magi that he created. And, that went through so many changes and adding and subtracting and changing a whole scene. And so he'll take an idea and change it all overnight. And then he'll come in the morning and say, here are the pages. And it's like,
it's like TV.
Yeah. It's fast. So it's fresh in the same way that I talked about Falstaff having different ways to go. It's fun to work on something new here because we do scripts that are age old. So
how about you, Sarah? I know with your work both on the advisory committee and your work as an actor at Forward, you do a lot more play. You do quite a few new plays or newer plays. How is it doing it here at home?
This felt great. And I have done another play, as Brian and Tracy both had worked on a new play, Doing Magi. I did a one-person show that Jimmy had written where he was both playwright and director. And the only thing I said to him was, oh, see this change you want, Mr. DeVita director? You need to talk to Mr. DeVita playwright about that in order to make that decision. So that he wasn't collaborating well with the director on that one. So it's the only different change.
That was Desert Queen about Gertrude Bell. It was a beautiful play. May have been led to us deciding he was not going to direct his own work this time. Then Kim Ostell and he are such great collaborators.
They are, and that was such a treat to be able to see the respect that each of them have for the other, and let alone how Jimmy feels about all of us that are in the room. It really felt like just so much love of wanting each other's ideas and nobody being territorial about it. And that is such a beautiful thing, because I worked on a play where the playwright was quite territorial, and it was really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And to see this kind of collaboration is everything that theater should be about. So I guess I liked it okay.
Okay.
It was.
I know, Melisa, that you had some conversations with Jimmy after the Zoom production, and I think really had a voice in shaping some of what we end up seeing in this final production. We have a couple minutes left. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's just opening that channel of collaboration and communication. And one of the things that I really appreciate working on this play with this ensemble, with Jimmy writing and with Tim, leading us, is that in a play in which this young person is trying to find her voice, for me, and actually being very assertive about it, and figuring out what else it can sound like, not being stifled behind closed doors and actually being encouraged to speak into that, I think is a big part of the ripple effect of collaboration. And I think was really helpful for me. Sometimes, sidebar, but sometimes we play certain characters that teach us something. And for me, because Juliet has come into my life at such pivotal moments, I always learn so much from the character, and to be able to share that with the director that directed me when I played it however many years ago, who's writing a new play, I just felt like it's a good pressure to have, and also a responsibility that I don't take lightly. And I was grateful to have been heard, and then also to have been challenged. And by those things, I was like, no, we really actually do need this line. We did cut a line, which I like to bring up. It was, look to the baked meats. It used to be my favorite line. So R.I.P. Look to the baked meats. Look to the baked meats.
Not almost as good as "Oh Bloody Period," which is everybody's favorite Shakespeare line. But I have one more question. This is about how is it to speak these words somewhat out of context? We're using Shakespeare's lines. And I know we're out of time, but I just want to know, you spoke the lines, mouths of different characters. There's a couple of different questions about it, and about the Shakespeare's lines in the mouths of different characters. How's that? If you played a character, if you played Hermione once and all of a sudden you're speaking her as Mistress Quickly, is that a little weird? Or
I've had a couple of little flashbacks when I said the thing, and then
little Isabella's, right?
Yeah, it's like, that's not the play. So I actually did have to actively push away the other story, because that it so well, and it kind of lives in your.
Yeah, as Ron was saying, it's still there.
And to be like, oh no, we just need to know. That was a big part of the development of the characters. We need to know who our characters were in the play. I'm not going to go with Isabella's line just because Juliet said one of her lines, so that's what kind of kept us in the same place. But it was hard. My mind would just be like.
Anybody else feel that same sort of displacement?
not displacement, but just joy that we get to revel in little bits of all these different amazing bits of writing all in the same play. It's why I really hope that this play gets many lives and many productions and other companies that appreciate Shakespeare, because people that love Shakespeare will love this play, because it's kind of a best of all in one, and yet it's its own story. Jimmy did this incredible thing with that, and he's also, his collaborative skills are so they're amazing, really. He's such a humble guy, and I know Melisa had a lot of talking with him, and Gavin, who did the original reading of Othello, gave him a lot of feedback, which he then took and put into Othello. And I would just call and go, because I've done a lot of Shakespeare here, I would call and go, oh, okay, you know that part in Hamlet? Maybe Cleopatra can use that part of Hamlet. And then he ended up putting bits of Hamlet into my mouth, but he was collaborative in that I would go, don't you think that might work when she's talking about how jealous she is? And then he would stick it in there and we'd try it out, and some of it we'd cut and some of it we'd keep. But it's really fun once you get on that train with him and in the headspace that he was in, to go, oh my gosh. And then this scene, if I just think about jealousy, there's like 7 great scenes about jealousy in Shakespeare. So I'll just look at all of them and call the best lines. That's what's great and fun about this play. And the audience recognizes so many of the things. And I hate to go on, but one more thing. I love every night hearing Falstaff say, I, me, sad hours seem long, right? It's not the first line of the play, but it's right at the beginning. Knowing that Jimmy played Romeo, the first show he ever did here was as Romeo, and that's one of Romeo's first lines. I love the duality of that so much, and I think of it every time I hear it. So I love
Me
it.
too. We hit time, but I just want to say that to that point, first of all, we've got some shows left. So there are tickets available. If you haven't seen it, you will revel in these characters and these gorgeous actors in this beautiful play. And if you're not able to come, either because you don't feel ready to be in groups, or because you're far away and can't get here, we have a wonderful filmed version that's available through our box office as well. That isn't a film; it is a captured live performance of these beautiful actors. And I did want to the lines, Brenda DeVita, our artistic director, was at one of the shows, and she got to enjoy not only all of you, but 2 young people who are clearly from the young Shakespeare players in Madison, who do these uncut Shakespeares, who were grabbing those lines out of the air and knew, and it didn't take them out of the play, just as Jimmy and Tim hoped. It just made them feel included, because they're big Shakespeare nerds just like us. So thank you for being Shakespeare Nerds, audience, for joining us on the box again. Thank you, all of you. I know you have lots of demands on your time, so I really appreciate you taking a minute to share some time with our audience.